Hi, this is my review of the SoRoPlay game tools. I actually find it funny that it's SoRoPlay instead of Solo Play. It sounds a bit like a Japanese pronunciation, like English, like SoRoPlay, hoi. So it's the SoRoPlay game tools, a basic solo fantasy RPG gaming and writing tools. This is a complete Game Master emulator, although there are some tables here that could serve for player emulation as well. Player character emulation specifically. I consider this to be the middle ground in terms of complexity when compared to the Tricube Tales solo rules. Look at the Tricube Tales, they are very simple, only 5 pages long, printed on both sides. And remember that the Tricube Tales system is actually free. You can support the publisher by paying. It's very affordable, and you get to download a set, or rather a deck of cards that could be used instead of these dice, the dice rolls in the Tricube Tales solo rules. And I also think that, for example, the gaming and writing tools that we have right here, although like I said, it's a bit more complex, a bit thicker in terms of page count, and I actually printed 2 pages per sheet of paper on both sides. I think this one is more simple. It's simpler when compared to the Solo Adventuring Toolkit, that monster of a book. I'm not even going to show it to you right now because I will have to pull it out and perhaps the microphone gets out of place or something. But yeah, I'm going to put a few links in the description to my reviews of the Tricube Tales solo rules and the Solo Adventuring Toolkit. That review and guide is still ongoing because it's such a monstrous book. Excuse me, sorry. In the case of the gaming and writing tools, it truly feels like the middle ground. If you have just started to play solo role-playing games, I recommend that you use the Tricube Tales emulator instead. Some players will be comfortable with that level of complexity. Some others will want much more, especially when it comes to the structure of plot lines and quests. Then you will go for the Solo Adventuring Toolkit. But if you're looking something a bit in the middle, with many tables to handle very specific details, then you definitely want to check out the gaming and writing tools of the SoRoPlay Game Tools series. I'm going to put all of the links in the description. Now let's talk about the quality of the PDF. If you're using it straight from the PDF, these gaming and writing tools, it's going to be very simple to use them. You have hyperlinks and bookmarks, so it's going to be very easy to navigate the entire PDF. Now, when it comes to errors, there are some typos and errors, but they won't present an obstacle when understanding the content, but they still look a bit ugly. That is, I found them a few times throughout the document. When it comes to the organization and writing, it's good. Although, now, some could consider this a neutral point, or perhaps a bit subjective, but when it comes to the writing style of Ken Wickham, as pointed out by a couple of my viewers, sometimes he gets a bit too precise, some would say a bit too autistic when it comes to trying to explain things. So for example, if I were to explain to you, if you have never seen, if you never saw a six-sided die, and I was trying to explain to you that, well, it's kind of like it's a cube, and it has numbers, a number on each side, from 1 to 6. That would be it. But Ken Wickham will be like, you have this cubical object, sometimes it is made out of plastic, sometimes it is made out of wood, sometimes it is made out of metal. On each side you have a number, you have 1. On another side, you have 2. So he gets really into that level of explanation. Sometimes I feel it like it hinders the explanation, but Other times, it feels really good. That is, it fits the context of someone who has never played solo role-playing games, or perhaps never played role-playing games in general before. So it feels right, like it's going to help the explanation. So in terms of quality, the quality in general is good. You have some illustrations. They're kind of like fantasy stock art. Let me see if I can find some of it here and try. I'm going to try to show it to you without getting out of focus, and hopefully the video won't get too choppy. I'm trying to look for a good example. So as you can see, they're kind of like the black and white illustrations that you would find in those free to download role-playing games, kind of like stock art. So they fulfill their inspirational purpose, but they are not that special. So overall, I would say that the quality is good with those caveats. Now let's talk about how you use this book or the contents. The document starts with a good introduction, although I still feel as if it's geared towards more advanced players. That is not for someone who has just started to play solo role-playing games. It's more like you have played a couple of sessions, a couple of solo sessions, and in that regard, Ken does a really good job when taking you from there to more advanced gameplay. But for a complete beginner, I would instead recommend the FlexTale Solo Rules. You know, it's less pages, a more simplified approach, and a lot of, like I said, a lot of solo players, they are going to be comfortable at that level of complexity. They won't need any of the other stuff. If you consider yourself like you are hungry for complexity and nuances, and you perhaps think that you are an expert solo role player, maybe you want to take on the Solo Adventuring Toolkit. My videos on I definitely recommend that you check out both videos of the FlexTale system and the Solo Adventuring Toolkit to get a pretty good sense of what you are getting into. But when it comes to these gaming and writing tools, although a beginner could make sense of it, especially because of the precise explanations of Ken Wickham, the system itself doesn't have a clear structure, at least when compared to FlexTales and Solo Adventuring Toolkit, on how to begin and end an adventure or an entire campaign as a solo experience. It's more like a set of tables that you use. After reading those guidelines, you decide what tables to use. You have the typical Game Master emulator table with yes or no answers, with yes, however, or no, giving you some further levels or nuances to the responses. So you could be moving into a bunker and you could ask something like, is the bunker empty? And they could respond with something like, no, however. So now that it said no, however, maybe it's not empty, but it's not exactly, however, it's not populated by living beings. Maybe there are corpses, or there are robots. It's all about what you make sense of the interpretation, or if you want to ask further questions, that's going to be the result of that line of questioning. So you have that typical table to serve as the launching platform or the meat of the system. Everything else could depend on the results of that yes or no table. You do have some modifiers depending on the context, on the actions, the situation, the encounter. Maybe sometimes your answer will move a bit more towards yes, a bit more towards no. They give you some guidelines on how to add those modifiers. At the start of the document, you have a good explanation on how to get more narrow or precise results by asking more closed questions. And if you want something a bit more broad or more general as a response, then you should use open questions. Ken also recommends that you apply the 1, 2, 3 method or system, that if something is not that important, is not directly tied to a particular mission or quest that you are undertaking, maybe that non-player character, those items, those places, they only require one detail. Oh, you were moving across this ravine and you stumbled upon a hut, but you already know that you are looking for a castle. So that hut or a shack or cabin, it's considered inconsequential. So maybe just make a roll on the details table to see the state, the general state of that shack, hut, etc. But what if you are looking for that castle and you encounter a castle in ruins? Last time you heard the castle was not in ruins, maybe that's important for the quest. So maybe you want to generate 2 or 3 details. You want to make 2 or 3 rolls to use those details to give you more information about the castle. So it's all about that. Okay, let's talk about the tables themselves. I already told you that you have that like Game Master emulator basic table of yes or no, however, this or that. You have a set of words, fantasy nouns, fantasy verbs, adjectives, and adverbs to give you all sorts of additional details concerning objects, places, and the like. So taking the castle as an example again, maybe you make a roll and you obtain caution, attack, charismatic, alchemically. So maybe an alchemist led some sort of attack. You have been hearing about this alchemist that has been leading an army attacking castles. Maybe that alchemist attacked the castle, so you need to enter with a bit of caution. You could use all of these words or some of them or none of them and choose other words depending on what you are, the sort of solo style that you are handling. Besides that, you also have tables to determine race, class, background, species. So maybe you are thinking, if you are looking for flags or some sort of sign, shields, crest that give you clues as to who inhabited that castle, and you see this symbol and you make a roll. Oh, it's a typical symbol of the Dragonborn, or it's a symbol used by the half-elves, or a symbol used by humans or Kenku or whatever. You have several species and races here. And you want to know about the class of someone. Maybe you encounter a corpse, and what is the corpse dressed as? Dressed, just what are the clothes of the corpse telling you? Maybe those are the typical garbs of a druid or a cleric, or perhaps of a monk or a magus. You also have details on the background. Maybe after further examination, you see that a corpse usually used to be, when that person was alive, it was an academic, perhaps specializing in divination, because he carries some sort of sack with runes or tarot cards or something. Or maybe you find some objects, additional weapons, medals that make you think, dog tags, depending on, maybe it's a science fantasy setting, that tell you that guy was probably in the military, perhaps heavy cavalry. So you can generate all sorts of things with these tables. They are quite similar to the Game Master's Apprentice deck. If you want to use Abraham's method, my method to emulate player characters, you could perhaps make some substitutions using this table instead of the Game Master's Apprentice deck. And even if you are playing some other genre like science fiction, modern horror, with a bit of imagination and tweaking, reskinning, you can apply these results to that setting. Maybe you're playing sci-fi, and in that setting you decide that there are no alchemists and now you have scientists. Or maybe in that setting you don't have dragonborn, but you have lizardmen, like, you know, typical like lizard species from planet whatever. So you could handle it like that. Okay, moving on. You have some guidelines on when to ask this or that question using the Game Master emulator tool. If you need guidelines, that's great for that. You also have details to determine the importance of the different non-player characters. If you find a somewhat not important non-player character, just like a typical villager that was walking around, you could make a roll to see if, oh well, that person has the body shape kind of like looks squarish, or maybe has sort of like a triangular body. And that is determined using a table that you are being led to after rolling in another table. Some of these tables take you to other tables within this document. Or maybe the character is a bit more important, so you're going to be determining the eye color, the emotion that character is expressing, the lip shape, the brow shape. It really goes into crazy details. We will talk a bit more about that in a few moments. And that's what I told you about Ken Wickham, that sometimes he gets a bit too precise, but in some cases it's a blessing or a boon, depending on the depth of detail that you are handling. So you can determine unique traits, common personalities. In unique traits you have things such as that determine chastity or kindness, diligence. These are based on virtues and vices. Gluttony, greed, envy. In personalities, you can find non-player characters that are caring or skillful, strong. Maybe they look to be hunters. They could be it could be related to their profession. Maybe they look like lone wolves or mediators of sorts. Now, when it comes to the emulation of player characters, you have a table called NPC Scene Actions table. It's basically an artificial intelligence to determine what a non-player character or even a player character is going to do in the presence of a hazard or an item or a room, a battle encounter. You make a roll and maybe the player character takes his or her main action. Maybe that player character is quite destructive and he or she usually ends up breaking things. If you're in a room and that player character finds like a jar, maybe he wants to know what's inside the jar, he just smashes the jar. That's his main action. Or maybe you obtain the result of other social interact. Maybe that player character or non-player character is not going to take action until he or she talks with a non-player character about that room. He sees this room, he enters this room with a base or any sort of object, and before attempting anything, he's going to wait to see if he or she finds a non-player character in that adventure site to obtain more information about this jar or object before trying to smash it to pieces. So there are different results like do other action, do special action, change of idea. Maybe you're not going to do anything at all with that jar in the room. You're just going to exit the room, that's it. So like I said, that's perfect to create this artificial intelligence for non-player characters or player characters if you're emulating player characters. You have information on a more scene, inciting event, and keywords such as the opening scene. Maybe the scene starts in the middle of the action, or maybe the scene begins with an argument between non-player characters, or perhaps you meet a main character in the storyline. When it comes to inciting events, maybe someone or something is being attacked, maybe someone dies, maybe there is an unexpected discovery. When it comes to words that could serve for questions, the keywords, perhaps you obtain the who or what or where, and that's the line of questioning. Maybe you're not sure how to start the scene and you make a roll and obtain the result of how. So now you need to make a how question in using any of the other tables, and that's how you set up your scene. So that's what I said, why I said this is not exactly a beginner tool set, because the beginner may feel a bit lost with all of these tables, but for an expert, you just, or more advanced player, just take what you like of these tables and use it for your starting scene. Don't get too confused, too stuck in how you're going to start the perfect beginning scene, and just take something and go for it. Make your roll and go with it. So you have different details concerning encounter and setting. Some of them could be of great importance, some of them would be more common, not that relevant. You make your role, and you need to generate facts about a place or the description of an item, or perhaps you need to generate an outdoor setting or an indoor setting. It's quite handy that you have these more larger tables here. Let me see if I can get that over here without the video stuttering too much because of the change of lighting. So you have the human generator table to determine everything from skin color, maybe the skin is ivory, sandy, beige, the height, maybe the individual is of average height or perhaps taller than average, or the individual is a giant. So you can generate facial hair, the chest or breast size. If you're playing an anime role-playing game, you can have your waifu with your double D size cup, like they love to paint those characters. The eye shape, the nose shape. You also have the motivation generator, covering things such as social areas, esteem, self-actualization, morality, personality. So you have results such as affection, love, truth, good, evil, completion, adventure. You have an animal generator with results such as food. Maybe the animal eats dead meat, or the animal eats fungi or seeds. Maybe you can determine the group size. Maybe it's a small pack, or maybe the animal is a solitary wanderer. You can determine the defense of the animal. Maybe it's covered in fur or in feathers or scales. Pretty much anything. You can use this as an animal generator. I think that's perfect for sci-fi settings or weird fantasy, when you get all these sorts of weird creatures with parts from other animals. Perhaps a mutant, an island filled with mutants, that could be useful. You also have a conflict generator to see if you obtain results like remorse, pursuit, seduction, learn in areas of revenge, pursuit, temptation, maturation. You have a foe generator, perfect to create enemies quite quickly. Maybe the enemy is a construct or a magical beast or an outsider. Maybe the creature is an arachnid. It could be some more abstract thing like an epidemic, more abstract, or paranormal. It could be a werewolf. You have chupacabra here, but it's better pronounced chupacabras if we are to respect the folklore. You also have the society. Maybe society is the enemy. Then you have the theme generator. Maybe the adventure features lots of action or themes of affections or moral affections as well, with results such as cunning versus butcher, or mediation versus combatant, wealth versus poverty. You also have a mood emotion generator with sadness, confusion, anger, courage, caring, sub-results such as distressed, friendly, uneasy, fearful, confident. There is, let me check that out. Oh yes, the twist generator with elements such as reversal of identity, reversal of fortune, reversal of role, with sub-results such as you've misled what happened. You see things that are relative to worse. You lose track of time. You are called into action early. Your timing is perfect. There is a fact generator determining all sorts of things from color to objects, persons, creatures, structures. Something perhaps has the ability to transform. Maybe there is something oily or woody or pungent. Maybe something or someone rather is moving, walking, running. Maybe someone is experiencing fear or anger, surprise. There is a table describing items, perfect for solo play. what sort of weapon or piece of equipment or artifact or whatever did you find? Maybe you would like to determine the shape. Maybe it's spherical or star shaped or cylindrical. You can determine the color, the origin. Maybe it's an urban object, or maybe it's something ancestral. Maybe it's somewhat ancient. You can determine the material. Maybe it's wooden, or it's made of silver, or even cloth. The type, the purpose, the opinion of someone encountering the item. Maybe the item makes you trusting. Maybe you have seen such objects in your homeland, or maybe you think that the item is strange. Then we have the setting generator. This is for the outdoor settings. You can determine the size of the place, the biome, the age, the origin. Maybe the place is flat or dull or barren or rocky or swampy. It's a mountain environment, a venomous environment. You have the indoor setting generator with details such as, like I said, size. It's similar to the outdoors table. Size, age, origin, material. Maybe things seem quite peaceful. Maybe the decoration, the interior decoration is rustic. Or perhaps it's too dark. Maybe the lights are not working. Maybe it's the typical luxurious house or a room that you would encounter in that part of the city. Maybe the room has a somewhat of a T shape in general. Maybe it's the study, the library, the hallway, the bathroom. So I am sure I have missed several tables that are included here, but like the material is too much, and I think that is going to be great for some of you. So what do I think of these SoRoPlay gaming and writing tools? This is truly a complete Game Master emulator, but I still think that it's at an advanced level. For someone that has just started, definitely go for the TriCube tables, or if you feel like the need to do it, the compulsion, get the Solo Adventuring Toolkit, that huge beast, and stick to the more simple parts of it, and only move to the other parts when you are ready. But if you are not looking for something that thick, or if you are familiar with solo role-playing games, and you don't want the TriCube Tales, although they are free, the system of the TriCube Tales, the rules are free. Definitely check them out. You really can't lose when doing that. It doesn't cost you anything. But in the case of the SoRoPlay gaming and writing tools, it's geared towards fantasy, but like I said, you can modify the results for any sort of genre. It's not for someone who wants a systemic approach. There is some structure and some systems when it comes to tables that you make your roll and they tell you, oh, now you need to generate this, go to this other table. There is a sequence, a process there, a method. But in general, the methodology is quite freeform. They won't give you like this step-by-step process on how to use all of the different tables. Sometimes these tables will apply to the adventure that you are running or to the campaign. Other times you will ignore several of these tables. So that's what I mean about being advanced in solo RPGs. You need to feel confident enough in that you are going to be picking from any of those tables according to your needs. Oh, I want to begin a solo RPG. I'm using any system you like. I'm using Call of Cthulhu. Oh, I don't know how to handle the starting scene. Well, you make the roll in the starting scene tables and see if you can get inspired with something. It tells you. It begins with the argument, and you make a roll to see, oh, is my character arguing with someone? You make a roll in the Game Master emulator table, and it tells you yes also. So you're arguing not just with one person, but with two people or more. Maybe you want to determine that using dice. Maybe you are trying to convince them that some strange mythos object points out to a lost civilization. Maybe you're in one of those clubs or societies that deal with anthropology or archaeology, etc. And you're trying to convince your peers of that, and that's how the adventure gets started. Now you have the excuse to look for voluntaries to create this expedition into some unknown place, and you start to determine all of those details, the outdoor settings that you are exploring, the details, the physical appearance of the ones that are going with you on this mission, the enemies that you will face as you are encountering them. Because like in many other Call of Cthulhu games, sometimes you have to face off against cultists or beings of the mythos, perhaps even deities or the great old ones. You definitely don't want that, but that could be determined using these tables. So I actually would say that I highly recommend this gaming and writing tools system, especially if you like to dive into the more specific details of an adventure. As recommended by Ken Wickham, just use a few tables depending on the situation. Make one or two rolls for things that are not that important. But if you want to fully flesh out everything about the setting, the characters, the objects, the places, the vehicles, flora, fauna, etc., definitely get this one. Now, before I finish this video, I want to make a recommendation and I want to ask a general question. First, my recommendation. When you purchase any of Ken Wickham's books or solo supplements or whatever, make sure you look at the different tables and information, because he tends to repeat some of his material at times. And for example, I already had the basic Game Master emulator. It was pretty affordable when I got it on sale, but that Game Master emulator is contained in this basic solo fantasy RPG gaming and writing tools system. So some of you could be thinking, oh, I already have those tables and I don't need this. I actually don't need this complete toolkit. So you need to make sure that you take a look at the comparison tables on the page of the different products to see if you're not buying some things that you already have. Maybe you are satisfied with the bulk of this product, that is, you already have the Game Master emulator, you have some tables on how to generate animals, outdoor settings, etc., and you think that it's actually not worth it. For someone who has never purchased Ken Wickham's products, you should definitely start with this one. I would say that it's the most complete solo product in Ken Wickham's library. I think Ken should really handle this in a different way. He should place like a small indication in his different books and all of that, telling you this supplement or this book or whatever contains material that already appears in this number of books, and that would be it, instead of building these very complex tables with each and every element listed, and you have to follow the list carefully to see if you're not purchasing something that you already have. That's why I also think that's a bit too autistic. Just write, if you already have this and that book or these books, this material has almost all of it there, or the tables about animal creation and outdoor settings, etc. And now my general question. I thought about this as I was playing some solo games. I'm working on the next Golden Sky Stories video. I still need to find a bit more time to complete that scene or that session, because sometimes when you're really busy you have to interrupt yourself. And I thought, I wonder if solo players in general, if they like a more uninterrupted approach, or a more section by section sort of methodology, when you are playing solo games. What I mean by that is that would you rather use a simplified Game Master emulator so that you keep the action going, or you are a bit more like, okay, you start to play, oh, what's this? Generate a non-player character. Oh, let me see if I can find a table to generate the details for that non-player character, and you start to roll and you put the session on pause, and after you finish generating all of those details, then you move on and you keep on playing. Oh, what's this? This is an adventure site. I want to generate all of those tables. I wonder if solo players in general enjoy a more fluid approach, or if they don't mind if they have to make some pauses, somewhat prolonged pauses in fact, to generate all of those details. I would really like to know your answers to that. In my case, I think it's a combination of both. Sometimes I'm running things pretty smoothly, and I just keep on rolling, and then you need to determine this. I just make a roll on the table and I keep on going. But sometimes I pause the game and I think I need to think about what tables I am going to use for this scene or for this encounter, and I start to completely pause the game, and I focus a lot more on finding the right sets of tables, the tools, generators, emulators, etc. for that encounter. So let me know in the comment section or through a video response or whatever if you like a more fluid approach, or if you don't mind pausing the game. Perhaps you even enjoy it. I have actually enjoyed looking for the right tables to handle that scene or that encounter, that combat, etc. So thank you for watching this video. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. Please check out the links in the description. If you haven't seen my videos on the Solo Adventuring Toolkit, the Crybcube Tales system, and thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending right through RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.